Welcome to part 2, the ortho images. I'm Ben Mathis and my website is www.poopinmymouth.com. Ortho images are views of the character from the front, side, and back, drawn without perspective. The idea is to provide a blueprint for modeling and to establish the look of the characters from all the angles. This video was captured at 2 frames per second and was sped up to 30 frames per second. The first thing I attempt to do is to establish the silhouette of the body. I'm drawing the body out as if it were nude to establish the proportions that I would want of the character underneath, and this makes it a lot easier to draw the final costume over top. So I've dragged out guides to help me with the placement of all the major points, the elbows, the rib cage, sternum, the bottom of the chin, the top of the head. I just drew those circles out to help with drawing the arms out at a 45-degree angle so they keep the same radius. Just drawing a quick pelvis, leg, trying to get the rhythm of the character down as quickly as possible. I'm trying mostly to come up with a really interesting rhythm to the character, but not to make her too skinny or too bulky. She needs to have a fair amount of curves, but nothing too great. So I just put a guide in the middle so that I can be able to duplicate over and only paint one side at a time. And I'm adjusting everything as much as possible before I go into any detail. So this is just a solid outline. Helps me really get the look and feel, hit all the protrusions, make sure everything has the correct silhouette, and only tighten up the smaller details as I get to them. And I'm also doing this at a fairly low resolution, and I'll size it up later the same way that I did with the original look and feel painting. So now that I've got the front fairly established, I'm working on the side view. So you can see now how the guides help with making sure that the chin and the top of the head line up. So the silhouette is one of the most important things to the character, and so I'm making sure that the face has exactly the type of look that I want. Again, rib cage, just getting the rhythm of the stance, pelvis. One of the most important things about ironing out these silhouettes is that when it comes time to model, this is going to help you be a lot more focused on the construction of the model rather than the how things work out in space. So this is the time when you want to make sure that you iron out any inconsistencies in your character. So I just duplicated the front view over to the back since it's still a silhouette. That works. Now I'm doing a side view of the arm, since from the side silhouette you can't really see it, and if you were to draw it over top it would obscure it anyway. So now I'm just backing them off to pure silhouettes with a stroke. That way I can focus on the actual costume now. So I'm giving it quite a bit of thickness over top of the character because I want the suit to look like it's actually got probably about an inch worth of thickness because it's thick quilting. So I've got that layer slightly opaque so that I can, or slightly transparent so that I can make sure that I still show her silhouette. I still want her to be obviously feminine, but I don't want to have it be skin tight. And I apologize, but that part of this concept I didn't have the recorder running, so that was just a big jump. So now I'm doing the secondary colors of white. I liked the idea of having kind of this like penguin-esque white and dark navy color scheme. And then most of these things I only painted one side since they're going to be fairly identical. The buttons running down the chest were taken from a Confederate general costume. That was where I got the idea for those. So now you can see a little bit of how I went about the painting of the front view. Just very couple colors, trying not to be too, just establishing all the form. Anything more is taking it too far if that's not really the purpose of drawing these. So I want to make sure all the elements of the costume line up as well so that I don't have to do too much interpretation when it comes time for the actual modeling. Now you can see how when it comes to the costume stage, having the character silhouette underneath aids greatly in just being as fast as possible, laying out the actual costume idea. And I didn't quite like the silhouette of the arm cuff, so I went back and I'm redrawing it, kind of ignoring the shading I've already done, and now going back in and correcting that. So because the front and back, if they're orthographic drawings, should be completely the same silhouette from front to back, all I had to do was mirror it over and then make the corrections from that view. All of this is just painting on a mask to get the silhouette, and painting on the actual layer with my standard paintbrush, using a little bit of smudge when necessary. So I wanted to bring in some elements of interest to the back view, because her face, her silhouette, everything provides a lot of interest from the front, but a lot of times the back view can be lacking in details. So I decided that these white stripes on the cuffs of the pants would be a good way to introduce a level of interest on the back that's just as much, if not more, than the front. Normally I try and introduce a lot more color variation when I'm doing my actual texture, but since this is just establishing where the pools of color will be, where the volumes will be, I'm just using the same 2 or 3 colors. I've got a dark, I've got a light, and then I've got an ultralight, like a specular highlight for each color. And then judicious use of the duplicate and flip. So now I'm trying to experiment with some other looks to the costume. So I've just made new folders, and now I'm experimenting with doing a different style for giving her coattails, seeing how that works. Then going in and providing a double row of buttons. And then instead of doing pants, we're adding tubing, adding stripes down the legs, and then I decided to try out some equestrian type pants, and then also pull in boots that would do something similar. I wanted to do a couple different variations just to really establish the interest and the look that I thought would be appropriate for the character. And because I've already got the silhouette established and the colors, it was extremely easy to just change up the different looks. And the final ortho drawing ended up using a little bit of every single layer, so I was glad that I'd done that experimentation to come up with something exactly like what I wanted. And one of the reasons why it's so easy to not go outside of the lines is I've got the selection so that way I can't draw the white outside of the already established black areas. Comes in extremely useful. So I decided bringing in some white to the top of the collars because she wasn't looking too much like a general. Experimented around with some collar elements, which I ended up scrapping. Make sure anytime you add an element, look at your other views and see if it looks like they would show up from those other angles, and that's going to make it easier for your final. I also was experimenting with trying to have 4 of her buttons be stars to kind of have more of the general look established. Ended up not quite liking that idea, so I got rid of them. I like the pulled coat, again, from the Confederate general. I really liked blending the stuff from the older, the Civil War with the more futuristic, modern, well-manufactured uniforms. So I figured one of the ropes hanging from the collar would also establish the general look. Bars on the collar. And then finally, the last element that really, I think, cemented the look of the general was the epaulets on the collar. So this is my final view that I ended up modeling off of. And it has some elements of all the different layers all the variations that I drew, and so I was glad that I did a lot of experimentation and came up with a solid view that was consistent from front, side, and back, and it greatly aided me in the modeling stage.